The girl just glances at the can, and it instantly crumples into a ball. It turns out she can control objects with her mind alone. Dr. Brenner breaks into a sinister smile and orders her to crush the white cat. But the girl tears off the devices, refusing to use her powers no matter what. Dr. Brenner is utterly disappointed and has her locked in a dark room for punishment. The girl can no longer contain her anger. She uses her mind to fling open the door and eliminates all the guards. She then flees the lab barefoot. Starving, she sneaks into a restaurant's kitchen, grabs a handful of fries and scarfs them down. The restaurant owner spots her and catches her red-handed. Taking pity on the poor girl, the owner doesn't give her a hard time. Instead, he makes her a hamburger. But the girl refuses to say much, only revealing her name is 11. Thinking she's a runaway who escaped abduction, the owner calls the social services for help. The noise of the fan disturbs her meal. She stares at it intently for a split second, and the fan stops spinning. Late at night, a woman knocks on the restaurant door, claiming to be a social services worker. The owner lets her in without hesitation, but she suddenly pulls the trigger. It turns out the lab run by Dr. Brenner has been monitoring all calls, determined to track down 11. 11 takes down 2 of her men in a panic. By the time Dr. Brenner arrives, 11 has already vanished without a trace. On the other side of town, something even more bizarre is happening. Mike and his 3 friends are playing games in the basement of his house, but it's getting too late. Mike's mom has to step in to stop the game and tell them to go to bed. The 3 friends say reluctant goodbyes to Mike and head home on their bikes. On the way, Dustin suggests racing Will to see who gets home faster. Will pedals as hard as he can, leaving Dustin far behind. To take a shortcut, he sneaks into a restricted area, exactly the land where that laboratory is located. Will has no idea danger is closing in. A dark figure flashes by suddenly, scaring him off his bike and rolling down the woods. As the monster closes in, Will abandons his bike and sprints toward home, slamming the door shut, but his brother and mom are both working the night shift and aren't there. He musters up the courage to walk to the window and look outside. Horror strikes. The monster has followed him home. He grabs the phone to call for help, but only eerie static comes through the line. Will bolts out the back door and flees to the shed. He finds a shotgun and cocks it tremblingly, but the monster materializes right behind him. In a burst of intense flashing lights, both of them vanish. Early the next morning, Will's mom and brother return home from their night shift, only to realize Will is missing. So Will's mom Joyce calls Mike's mom to ask about him. Mike's mom says Will left her house at 8 p.m. the night before. Joyce immediately senses something is wrong and rushes to the police station to report her son missing. But the chief doesn't take it seriously. The small town is peaceful. No crimes or accidents have happened there in decades. The chief thinks Will might have skipped school to play, but Joyce is certain that's not like her son. He would never disappear without a word. Something must have happened to him. Under Joyce's insistent demands, the chief reluctantly agrees to search for Will. First, he goes to the school to find Will's 3 friends and ask about the previous night. That's when the 3 boys learn their friend is missing and panic sets in. But they can't provide any useful clues. The chief and his deputies search along Will's bike route. They quickly find Will's bike in the woods, and the chief finally realizes something is very wrong. A bike is invaluable to a kid. Will would never abandon it unless it was an emergency. The chief goes to Will's house and notices signs that the door was forced open. This means Will had made it home the night before. A dog outside keeps barking frantically toward the shed, catching the chief's attention. He finds the loaded shotgun inside. Just as he's about to investigate further, the lights go out. Everything feels increasingly bizarre. The chief immediately gathers the entire town to expand the search, but they still find nothing. With their best friend missing for a full day, the 3 young boys can't sit idly by. They brave the heavy rain and venture into the dark woods. But the figure that appears before them isn't Will, it's 11. Over at the laboratory, Dr. Brenner orders everyone to put on protective gear and arm themselves with heavy weapons. They then take the elevator down to the deepest level of the lab. It was here, in a laboratory in Indiana back in 1983, that the monster chased down a lab worker and escaped the night before. Now, a slimy cave remains on the wall, ouncing with disgusting mucus and tentacles. Even as the cave expands, Dr. Brenner doesn't tell his men to hunt the monster first. Instead, he insists they find the girl at all costs. Little do they know, their target is right there in Mike's basement. Seeing that she's soaking wet, Mike grabs a clean set of clothes for her to change into. 11 instinctively undresses.
No, oh my God.
Having been locked up in the lab for so long, 11 doesn't understand the difference between boys and girls. Mike thoughtfully guides her to the bathroom. 11 refuses to let him lock the door, asking him to leave it slightly ajar. 11's behavior is far too strange. Lucas and Dustin want nothing to do with her. But Mike is different. He decides to let her stay in the basement for the night. First thing in the morning, he'll ask his mom to take her to social services. But 11 rejects the idea, saying she doesn't want anyone else's help. She uses hand gestures to tell Mike that bad people are chasing her. She just wants to stay here. Meanwhile, a mysterious call comes through to Will's mom, but all she hears is faint breathing and a gurgling sound like the monsters. Joyce's intuition tells her it's her son calling. The phone burns out, and Joyce is on the verge of collapse, unable to reach her youngest son. Her oldest son, Jonathan, is also racked with guilt for failing to protect his little brother. The next day, while his family is out, Mike shows 11 around his house and plays with her. When 11 sees a photo of the 4 boys, she points at Will with a terrified look. Mike realizes she seems to know Will. Suddenly, Mike's mom comes home. He hurries to take her to his bedroom and hides her in the closet. The cramped, dark space triggers 11's painful memories of the laboratory, and she has a PTSD episode. Faced with the boys' questions, she only stays silent. Lucas doesn't want any trouble and storms out, planning to call Mike's mom to kick her out. 11 uses her powers to block the exit.
No.
After learning about 11's powers, the boys are so scared they can't eat their dinner. They bring her meatloaf, promising not to tell anyone about her. They'd only upset her because they're desperate to find their friend. But 11 has no idea what a friend is. The boys explain with specific examples, and 11 finally understands how important Will is to them. So she uses her powers to sense Will's location, then tells everyone through a game Will is hiding. But he's not hiding from humans, he's hiding from a monster. Meanwhile, Joyce goes to her boss at the store to ask for an advance on her paycheck, to fund the search for her son and buy a new phone. Back at the laboratory, they overhear news of Will's disappearance. Dr. Brenner suspects the escaped monster is behind it. He orders the technicians to put on protective gear and sneak into Will's yard to search. Following their equipment's readings, they enter the shed, and sure enough, they find the monster's slime. The chief leads the townsfolk in a desperate search for him for 2 days, but there's still no sign of Will. His mother is on the verge of collapse. Late at night, a phone rings. Joyce frantically asks where her son is, but the electricity fries the phone. Right after that, the lights flicker non-stop, getting her to her son's room. The radio suddenly blares music, startling her. The desk lamp flashes rapidly, yet as soon as she steps close, the light goes out. The wall suddenly bulges. Something is about to burst through. Joyce bolts out of the house in terror, but just as she's about to drive away, the music and lights in Will's room turn on again. Joyce guesses this is her son trying to communicate with her. She gathers her courage and heads back inside. She can't afford to miss any chance to save her son. Meanwhile, Will's brother is combing the forest for clues. It's the last place Will was seen. A scream in the distance catches his attention. Turns out to be a group of high schoolers partying by a swimming pool. Mike's older sister Nancy is among them. Her best friend Barb cuts her hand while using a knife to open a can. But no one cares, they're all too busy having fun. Every moment of this is captured by Jonathan's camera. Nancy plans to stay overnight at her boyfriend's villa and tells Barb to head home alone. She and her boyfriend Steve have other plans. But worried about Nancy's safety, Barb stays behind, waiting alone by the pool. Blood from Barb's wound drips into the water. Suddenly, the lights go out. Barb is dragged into a world filled with floating, fluff-like substances. She screams for Nancy in terror. No one responds, except the monster. Barb is petrified, scrambling to climb up the pool ladder, but the monster pulls her down into the abyss. Across the pool, Jonathan takes photos of Nancy undressing in her boyfriend's room. He's so focused on checking the photos that he misses the moment Barb is taken by the monster. The next day at school, Nancy notices Barb isn't there. None of the other students have seen her either. Nancy hurries to call Barb's mom, who says Barb never came home after going out with Nancy the night before. Realizing her best friend is missing, Nancy panics completely. Meanwhile, Will's mom is just as on edge. She tells her oldest son Jonathan about the monster she encountered, insisting Will is trying to communicate with her through the lights. But Jonathan doesn't believe her, arguing it's absurd. Even so, Joyce refuses to give up. She hangs up all her Christmas lights and turns them on, hoping Will will use the lights to reach her again. Just then, Mike's mom stops by with her young daughter to check on her. While the adults talk, the little girl is drawn to the flickering lights and follows them into the room. After a rapid flash, the lights go out, and the monster starts bouncing through the walls. Thankfully, Joyce rushes in and snatches the little girl away. The child's terrified reaction confirms Joyce's belief in the monster. She quickly ushers them out, fearing they'll get pulled into the danger. On the other side of town, police find a small piece of cloth near a pipe. It is so narrow that only a child could barely squeeze through, and the other end of the pipe leads straight to the lab. The chief suspects Will crawled into the lab, so he goes to check the security cameras. They show nothing out of the ordinary, but he immediately notices the footage has been tampered with. It had poured rain the day of his search, yet there's no rain in the video. Clearly, the lab is hiding something. He heads to the library right away to look up information about the lab, where he finds reports of mind control experiments. A woman once sued the lab, claiming they stole her daughter for their tests. But the woman later went insane, and the case was dropped. Just as the chief is about to dig deeper, an emergency call pulls him away. At the high school, Jonathan is developing the photos he took. A female classmate spots them and tells Nancy's boyfriend Steve. Steve and his friends corner Jonathan and humiliate him. Steve slams Jonathan's camera to the ground and tears the photos to shreds. Nancy is mortified as the subject of the intimate photos. But when she glances down, she notices Barb in one of the photo fragments. She quietly pockets the pieces. Later, Nancy checks the spot where Barb parked. The car's still there, but Barb's gone. She walks into the woods, calling Barb's name. A dark figure darts past her from behind. Nancy bolts in terror. After school, the three boys follow 11, hoping she can help them find Will. 11 leads them to Will's house and says he's inside. The boys think she's lying and get upset. Just then, police cars speed past them. The kids hop on their bikes and follow, only to receive devastating news when they arrive. Officers have pulled Will's body out of the river. All 4 kids are heartbroken. Mike can't contain his grief and blames everything on 11, calling her a liar, for she'd insisted Will was still alive. 11 is lost for words and on the verge of tears. The chief breaks the devastating news to Will's mom, but Joyce is convinced the dead boy isn't her son. She says she'd communicated with Will through the lights just an hour earlier. Back then, Will used flickering lights to signal yes that he was alive, yet he couldn't answer questions like where he was. So she wrote the 26 letters on the wall, placing a light bulb above each one. When she asked Will where he was, he used the lights to respond, right here. Joyce was confused. She was the only one in the room. But she had no time to ask more, for Will spelled run. The monster burst through the wall, and Joyce ran until she bumped into her oldest son, who'd just returned home. She tells the chief she's communicated with Will via the lights and a monster has crawled out of the wall. But no one believes her. They think it's a hallucination from the agony of losing her child. At dawn, Joyce and Jonathan go to the morgue and see Will's body through the glass. But Joyce insists it's not Will and refuses to sign for the body. Jonathan begs his mom to stop acting crazy, saying a funeral will let Will rest in peace. But Joyce is certain Will is alive and determined to bring him home safe. They argue on the street and part on bad terms. Little do they know, the chief has learned crucial info from the medical examiner. Will's body was delivered and autopsied by 6 state troopers, no town coroner involved. The chief immediately tracks down the trooper who first found Will's body. The trooper admits someone deliberately led him to the pond. Just as he's about to say more, a car pulls up. The trooper flees. The chief realizes something's fishy. In Mike's basement, 11 uses her telekinesis to mess with a walkie-talkie. Soon, a boy's singing comes through. Mike recognizes Will's voice and is certain he's alive. He calls his two friends over and tells them, but no matter how much 11 tinkers with the walkie-talkie, it won't respond. Mike figures the signal's too weak, so he decides to take her to school. There's a more powerful radio setup there. To hide her identity, Mike puts makeup on 11. In the wig and new look, she leaves Mike starstruck. The four kids go to school, but a teacher stops them as they're about to enter the communications room. The school's holding a memorial assembly for Will. The teacher agrees they can use the radio only after attending. During the tribute, two boys snicker and make fun of Will. They've always bullied Mike and his friends, who never dared fight back. But this time, Mike stands up bravely, calling them disrespectful and demanding an apology. However, the boys brush him off completely. Enraged, Mike pushes one to the ground. As the boy's about to fight back, his feet freeze and he wets himself. It's all 11's doing. What amazing girlfriend energy. The man puts on a sturdy protective suit and helmet, attaching a hook and steel cable to his waist. Dr. Brenner then sends him into the lab's underground level. There's an entrance covered in vines, pulsing with a rhythmic breath. The man peels off the slimy membrane and crawls in. Minutes later, he reports extremely low visibility inside, but he cuts off. Voice panicked.
There's something else in here.
Dr. Brenner urgently orders the cable pulled back to retrieve him, but the cable shakes violently, as if the man is fighting something. At the same time, Joyce hears her son's voice coming from the walls. She tears off the wallpaper frantically. Will is there, but she can't touch him, as if he's in another world. At school, 11 uses her powers to tune into the large radio and pick up Joyce and Will's conversation. 11 was trained in long-range eavesdropping by Dr. Brenner back in the lab. Will tells his mom he feels like he's at home, but it's dark and cold, and the monster is chasing him. Joyce begs him to hide, promising she'll come rescue him. As the wall repairs itself, the radio sparks and catches fire. 11 collapses, exhausted from overusing her powers. Joyce smashes through the wall with an axe, but only sunlight streams in, nothing else. Back at the lab, the steel cable suddenly goes slack. What's pulled out isn't the man, only the hook, soaked in blood. The gate then closes on its own, returning to silence. In the basement, the three boys hash out where Will could be.
Upside down.
Her words jog Mike's memory. 11 once flipped a board to show them Will's location. Suddenly, he gets what she meant. Will is at home, but not in their world. In the other side, that's why they can't see him. It's like the Veil of Shadows from Dungeons and Dragons. A dark dimension, a demon's lair, right beside you yet invisible. The question is, how do they get there in real life? Little do they know, someone is about to find the secret gate. The chief heads to the morgue, knocks out the state trooper at the door, and goes inside to examine Will's body. He cuts it open, only to find it stuffed with cotton. It's a fake. Now, he's sure Will's disappearance ties to the lab. Late at night, the chief sneaks into the lab but gets spotted by two guards. He knocks them out, steals their key card, and reaches the mysterious gate, stunned by the fleshy, tumor-like substance covering it. As he leans in to investigate, a shadow darts behind him. A researcher stabs him with a needle, and he blacks out. The next day, Jonathan holds the funeral for his young brother Will as planned. Some cry, but Will's mom and the three boys don't care. They believe he's alive. The boys track down their teacher, Mr. Clark, to ask how to enter a world like the Veil of Shadows. Clark uses an example. A tightrope walker in our world can only move forward and back. A flea on the rope, though, can crawl sideways or under, something the walker can't do. To move like the flea, you need enormous energy, enough to tear space and time, creating a gate to the upside down. But that gate messes with the world's magnetic field, even swallowing reality. Back home, Mike explains Clark's theory to 11. Strangely enough, she knows the upside down exists but not where the gate is, but when push comes to shove, Dustin's the one. All the compasses in the house are wrong, pointing nowhere near north. Following Clark's logic, the gate's electromagnetic interference is causing this. If they follow the compasses, they'll find the gate. Meanwhile, the two high schoolers know nothing about the upside down, but they've uncovered the monster's existence. Worried over her best friend Barb's disappearance for days, Nancy tells her boyfriend Steve about the monster she saw, but Steve brushes it off. He won't let her call the police. If the cops tell his parents about the party he threw, he'll be ruined. What a coward! Furious, Nancy storms off. Staring at Barb's photo, Nancy regrets not leaving with her that night. Then she glances at the corner of the photo. The monster there is exactly the one she saw. Putting it all together, she realizes Barb was probably taken by it. Nancy hurries to find Jonathan, who took the photo, and asks if he saw anything that night. Jonathan naturally didn't. Nancy tells him about the faceless monster she spotted in the woods. That jolts Jonathan awake. His mom claimed to see a monster too. Jonathan enhances and zooms in on the photo. After getting a clear look, he finally believes everything his mom said. Upon careful analysis, Jonathan and Nancy discover the monster's appearance spot is close to his house and the woods where Will went missing. He's searching for his brother, she for her best friend, so they decide to team up to find and kill the monster. Let's cut to the four kids. They're following the compass to find the source of the magnetic disturbance. 11 says she's tired and tells everyone to turn back, but no one listens. After walking for ages, Dustin finally realizes they've been going in circles, stuck with no way out. Lucas notices nosebleed stains on 11's sleeve. It's proof she's been using her powers to interfere with the compass. Enraged, Lucas accuses 11 of being a traitor, sabotaging their mission to save Will, but Mike trusts 11 and even sticks up for her. The two boys start fighting. To protect Mike, 11 uses her powers to fling Lucas away, but she can't control her strength. Watching Lucas knock out cold, Mike gets angry too, yelling at 11 for being crazy. Little do they know, 11 did this to protect them, because the world they're so desperate to reach is far too dangerous. Years ago, Dr. Brenner showed her a photo of a Russian military officer and told her to locate him with her mind. 11 was put in a special suit and a wire headgear. They submerged her in a water-filled tank, depriving her of other senses to enhance her mental powers. Here, she could get close to the target without being detected. 11 could transmit the target's voice to the real world through radios, but during this experiment, she found a monster there. Terrified, she returned to reality. It seems the Upside Down's gate was discovered by accident this way. Soon after, Lucas wakes up, furious that Mike fought him for a freak. He leaves. Only then does Mike realize 11 is gone too. Meanwhile, the chief wakes up, shocked to find himself at home. He notices a needle mark on his neck, grabs his gun and rushes outside, but sees no suspects. He ransacks the house, searching every corner, and finally finds a bug in a lampshade. Just then, two police officers knock on the door, telling him another person has gone missing near the lab. The chief realizes the lab's top brass have tentacles everywhere. This place is no longer safe. He calls his ex-wife, telling her to take care of herself and say hello to her current partner. It's clear he's ready to fight the lab to the death. He then knocks on Joyce's door, signaling her to stay quiet. He removes all the light bulbs in her house to check them. Confirming there are no bugs, he tells Joyce about the fake body and the lab's secrets. He finally believes her. She'd been right all along. The chief says the lab is probably conducting some kind of sinister experiments. Earlier, when he snuck in, he'd seen a cell-like room, suspecting Will had been locked up there, because there was a drawing on the wall depicting an adult and a child. Joyce smirks confidently and slaps Will's drawings down in front of him. Clearly, that stick figure style was no match for Will's. The kid who'd been locked in the lab couldn't have been Will. The chief suddenly remembers the testimony about the diner owner's death. A customer claimed to have seen a kid with very short hair at the diner before the owner died. He'd always thought that kid was Will, never knowing 11 existed. That makes sense. A buzzcut kid doesn't scream girl at first. Talking about the missing kid, it reminds the chief of the woman who accused Dr. Brenner and the lab of stealing her child. In the woods, Jonathan and Nancy spot a severely injured deer. Filled with pity, they plan to end its suffering with a shot, but something suddenly yanks the deer away. They scan the area, finding nothing, so they split up to search. Nancy follows the blood trail to a tree hollow. Driven by curiosity, she crawls inside. This place, it's none other than the Upside Down. The monster is gnawing on the deer, savoring its meal. Terrified, Nancy eases back quietly. Her scream catches Jonathan's attention. Though trapped in separate dimensions, they can hear each other. Nancy dodges the monster while following Jonathan's voice back to the hollow. Just as the opening starts to close, Jonathan yanks her out. The terrified girl clings tightly to him. Half an hour later, Steve climbs through the window to see his girlfriend, only to spot Jonathan with his arm around Nancy. Convinced he's been cheated on, he storms off in a rage. Too scared to be alone, Nancy begs Jonathan to stay. They sleep in the same bed, though nothing inappropriate happens between them. The next day, the chief and Joyce track down the woman who accused the lab of stealing her daughter to question her, but Terry says nothing. She's like a vegetable, completely unresponsive. Her sister explains that back in the 1950s, Terry was used as a guinea pig for an experiment aimed at expanding human brain potential. Tragically, she had no idea she was pregnant at the time. After taking too many experimental drugs, she miscarried in her 3rd trimester. Since then, Terry's mental state crumbled. She imagined giving birth to a daughter named Jane, insisting the girl was special, born with superpowers. That's why the man from the lab stole Jane. Terry claimed he wanted to turn her into a superweapon against the Soviet Union. As viewers with a god's eye view, we know that daughter is 11. But Terry's sister didn't believe a word she said. She investigated thoroughly and found no birth certificate. Doctors and nurses all confirmed Terry's miscarriage. The chief and Joyce, however, are skeptical. The signs all point to Terry's child existing. For Joyce, despair sets in. If Terry hasn't found her daughter in 12 years, how long will it take her to find Will? Amid the sorrow, the chief gets a call from the station. Jonathan has been arrested. To find out what happened, let's cut back to the 2 high schoolers. They realize the monster only hunts at night, and blood is the key to luring it. Barb had a cut on her hand, and the deer was bleeding too. That's why both drew the creature. Determined to lure the monster out, Jonathan and Nancy head to a gun shop to buy bullets, bear traps, and other supplies. On their way, a classmate mocks Nancy, and they spot why. The movie theater sign is scrawled with red letters calling her a slut. It's Steve who did this. He's bitter after seeing Nancy with Jonathan the night before. Furious, Nancy slaps Steve, but can't explain the situation clearly. Unable to take his anger out on her, Steve shoves Jonathan and hurls insults. Jonathan holds his temper until Steve insults his mom and brother. That's the last straw. Jonathan pummels Steve, who stands no chance against him. Even when the police arrive, they struggle to restrain the enraged Jonathan. He ends up getting arrested after accidentally injuring an officer. Meanwhile, as the night passes, 11 still hasn't returned to Mike's house, and Mike is beside himself with worry. Dustin urges him to make up with Lucas first, then the 3 of them can search for 11 together. After all, Mike was the one who threw the first punch. Taking his advice, Mike offers Lucas an olive branch. But Lucas lays down a condition. The 3 of them will hunt for the Upside Down's gate and leave 11 out. Mike shuts down the idea immediately. The 2 argue again, neither willing to back down. In the end, Lucas decides to go find the gate and rescue Will alone. Elsewhere, 11 wanders through the woods. She puts on a wig, only to yank it off right away. She's having doubts about her identity. Starving, 11 dashes into a supermarket and grabs a pile of waffles straight into her arms. The clerk chases her, demanding payment. Without looking back, she blasts open the glass doors and storms off. Later, 11 enjoys the waffles in the woods until she hears someone calling her name. It's Mike and Dustin, come to find her. But the boys have bad luck. They run into 2 school bullies who always pick on them. Brandishing a knife, the bullies want revenge on Mike for wetting his pants. The boys are chased to the edge of a cliff. One bully grabs Dustin, pressing the knife to his neck. He forces Mike to jump off the cliff, or he'll knock out Dustin's teeth. To save his friend, Mike agrees. No matter how much Dustin begs him, Mike leaps without hesitation. The bullies are stunned. They rush over to check, only to be even more shocked by what happens next. Mike is floating in midair. He then rises gently back up to the cliff. Everyone is frozen with fear. 11 strides over, uses her mind to knock one bully down, and flicks her head to snap the other's arm. The 2 bullies flee, but 11 collapses to the ground. Through tears, she tells Mike the truth. Not long ago, Dr. Brenner submerged her in a saltwater tank, making her use her powers to locate the monster. But when the monster turned around, her overwhelming fear unleashed a massive burst of energy, cracking the lab's walls. It turns out 11 was the one who opened the gate to the Upside Down. She's scared of the monster, and even more scared that her friends will see her as one. Mike pulls her into a hug, stopping her from blaming herself. He tells her monsters don't save people's lives. 11 finally understands what friendship means. The three fully accept each other from the bottom of their hearts. Inside the lab, weapons are quickly loaded. Dr. Brenner and a team of his men get in their cars, setting out to capture 11. They don't notice someone watching their every move, Lucas. On the hunt for the Upside Down's gate, Lucas followed his flickering compass to the lab's perimeter. Through binoculars, he sees the large group mobilizing and senses danger. He hurries to contact Mike on his walkie-talkie, warning that the lab knows 11 is at his house and they need to run. Mike and Dustin rush to the window and spot the suspicious watchers. Two boys grab their bikes, take 11 out the back door and flee. Dr. Brenner spots them just in time and leads the chase. The three kids turn down a side road and meet up with Lucas, but bikes can't outrun cars. The lab vehicles quickly box the four kids in from front and back. Just in time, 11 unleashes her powers. The car in front flips over, blocking all the others behind it. The four kids escape to an abandoned parking lot. Lucas admits he was wrong about 11, apologizes to her, and makes up with Mike. Suddenly, a helicopter flies overhead nearby. The four kids immediately hide their bikes under an abandoned bus and climb inside. Over at the police station, the chief and Joyce arrive to bail Jonathan out, but the officer refuses to remove his handcuffs. Jonathan had dangerous weapons for fighting in his car. Cornered by questions, Jonathan has no choice but to admit he and Nancy were planning to take on the monster. Joyce scolds him for taking such a risk with his and Nancy's lives, saying he shouldn't have shouldered this alone. Just then, the bully with a broken arm shows up at the station with his mom to file a report. From his description, the chief realizes the buzz-cut figure the restaurant owner saw earlier is actually a girl, 11. He also learns she has superpowers and often hangs out with Mike and his friends. The chief and his team rush to Mike's house, only to spot lab agents sealing off the area from afar. Jonathan comes up with a way to reach the kids. They head back to his place and dig out his brother Will's walkie-talkie. Inside the abandoned bus, the four kids hear Nancy's voice over the walkie-talkie, but cautious Mike holds back from responding. Suspecting a trap, he thinks Nancy might be coerced by the lab to reveal their location. The chief snatches the walkie-talkie, admitting he already knows about 11 and offering to help. Left with no other option, Mike trusts him and reveals their position. Unfortunately, the lab agents track them down too. The bikes hidden under the bus are found, giving away the kids' trail. As one agent is about to search the bus, a blow knocks him out. After a flurry of screams, the lab team collapses, and the chief boards the bus to rescue the kids. Late at night, the group of kids, teens, and adults finally reunites. Mike tells everyone about the Upside Down, explaining Will and Barb were taken there. He adds the gate to the Upside Down is beneath the lab, a fact the chief confirms having seen it with his own eyes. They ask 11 to reach out to Will and Barb trapped in the Upside Down, but she can't summon her powers, leaving her heartbroken. The three boys reassure her every time she uses her abilities. She grows weak. The more she pushes, the more exhausted she gets. It's like needing to rest while her powers recharge. As 11 splashes water on her face to calm down, she notices the bathtub nearby. She has a plan: submerge her in the tub to deprive her of her senses. Just like Dr. Brenner did at the lab, it will amplify her powers. Dustin immediately calls Mr. Clark to ask how to build sensory deprivation tanks. Soon, the group sneaks into the school, splitting up to gather the necessary supplies. The group unfolds an inflatable pool on the basketball court, then dumps 1,500 pounds of salt into it. They keep pouring until an egg floats on the surface. 11 puts on a blindfold, steps into the pool, floating on the water. As the lights go out, she activates her powers, successfully projecting her consciousness into the Upside Down. It doesn't take long for her to find Barb, but the girl is already dead. The horrifying way she died terrifies 11. Joyce gently takes her hand and soothes her, letting 11 calm down at last. When she opens her eyes again, she sees a castle exactly the same as the secret base Will built in the real world. Stepping inside, she finds Will weak and on the verge of collapse. 11 urges him to hold on, they'll come rescue him soon. But just then, Will and the castle fade away. Startled, 11 snaps back to reality. Joyce wraps her in a tight hug, thanking her profusely for everything she's done. After that, the chief and Joyce tell the kids to stay put. They'll drive to the lab, go through the upside-down gate, and bring Will back. Unexpectedly, lab agents are already lying in wait, grabbing them on the spot. The two are separated for interrogation. Dr. Brenner puts on a pitiful act, trying to guilt-trip Joyce into helping him. Disgusted, Joyce calls out his hypocrisy and lies to his face.
Go to hell.
The chief's interrogation, by contrast, is far from gentle. Even as he's shocked with electricity, he spills all the dirty deeds the lab has done. Furious, the interrogator plots his staged overdose. Left with no choice, the chief proposes a deal. If the lab lets him and Joyce enter the Upside Down to rescue Will, they'll swear never to expose the lab's secrets to the outside world. In the end, Dr. Brenner agrees to the deal, promising not to harass the three boys anymore. In exchange, the chief tells him where 11 is. Back at school, the kids huddle together. Mike is shocked to realize his sister Nancy and Will's brother Jonathan are gone. It turns out, after the adults left, Nancy was crushed by the news of her best friend's death. Channeling her grief into courage, she decides to kill the monster to end this once and for all. Jonathan shares exactly the same thought. They head to the police station and get back their hunting equipment, before making their way to Jonathan's house to set traps. To lure the monster out, they slice their palms and let their blood drip across the floor. Through days of life or death struggles, their bond has grown stronger. Just then, there's a knock at the door. It's Steve. After being beaten up by Jonathan, he finally came to his senses. He truly loves Nancy, not just for fun. He'd wiped the graffiti off the movie theater billboard, then come to apologize and win her back. Seeing Nancy's injured hand, Steve assumes Jonathan did it. Furious, he storms inside, only to freeze at the sight of all their hunting gear. Not wanting to endanger him, Nancy guns him away. But then the lights start flickering. The ceiling bursts open, and the monster crashes through. Nancy's bullets do nothing to hurt it. The three scramble into a room and lock themselves in. Strangely, the lights stop flickering, and the noise outside fades. When they open the door, the monster is gone. Terrified, Steve bolts out of the house, heading for his car. Nancy and Jonathan stand back to back, scanning the darkness. Soon, the monster reappears, tackling Jonathan to the ground. Nancy fires repeatedly, but it's useless. Just as all hope seems lost, Steve bursts back in, swinging a baseball bat at the monster. Turns out, he'd seen the flickering lights and couldn't bring himself to abandon them. The monster staggers back from Steve's blows, stepping right into a bear trap. Jonathan hurls a lighter, setting the monster ablaze. But when the fire dies down, the monster is gone, leaving only a puddle of slime behind. In the Upside Down, the chief and Joyce search cautiously for Will. The chief spots a massive eggshell. This must be where the monster hatched. Joyce finds Will's castle, but he's nowhere to be seen. They head to Joyce's house to keep looking. Miraculously, the light bulbs in the real world flicker on as they walk through the upside-down version. Sensing it's not the monster, Jonathan calls out. Joyce in the Upside Down hears her son's voice instantly.
Jonathan?
She also spots the monster's slime on the ground. Now, it's the kids' turn to face danger. To help 11 recharge, Dustin and Lucas head to the school cafeteria for cans of food. Meanwhile, Mike and 11 share a tender moment. 11 experiences her first kiss, unlocking a new joy. What a buzzkill! Lab agents arrive with weapons. The four kids flee, but they're trapped and caught between two groups of agents. 11 doesn't back down. With her telekinetic attack, the agents collapse, bleeding, but 11 faints from exhaustion. Just then, Dr. Brenner arrives with his men, capturing the three boys. He picks up the weak 11, cooing that he'll take her back to the lab for treatment. But 11 firmly rejects the bad man. In the days since escaping, she's felt true friendship. She won't be fooled by his fake fatherly affection anymore. Before one crisis ends, another hits. As the smell of blood spreads, thick walls shatter, and the monster bursts through. While the adults fight, the three boys quickly carry 11 to safety. Despite heavy gunfire, Dr. Brenner and his men are all wiped out. On the other side, the Chief and Joyce finally find Will in the monster's lair after much trouble. The Chief yanks a long tentacle from Will's mouth and blasts it to pieces with his gun. But Will has stopped breathing. The two work together to perform CPR on him. Watching Joyce crumble with grief over her son, the Chief thinks of his own daughter. He once had a lovely daughter. Sadly, she'd been diagnosed with an incurable illness. He'd stood helpless by her hospital bed, watching her pass away. This time, he refuses to regret it. He won't let this boy die too. He channels all his love and guilt for his daughter into prayers for Will. Fortunately, fate cuts him a break. Will gasps back to life. Back at school, the three boys lay the weak 11 on a desk. Mike does his best to comfort her, promising she can live with him forever and eat as many waffles as she wants. But in the next second, the monster smashes through the door. Lucas panics, grabbing his slingshot and firing. But bullets couldn't hurt it. The slingshot feels more like a tickle. Lucas doesn't give up and fires with all his strength. This time, the monster slams into the wall, pinned down and completely immobile. Wait, when did the slingshot get this powerful? Oops, turns out 11 superpowers were boosting it. Now, she's more afraid of losing her friends than the monster. 11 walks toward the monster, glancing back at the boys with longing.
Goodbye, Mike.
She'll end the disaster she started herself. With a roar, 11 and the monster vanish in a cloud of ash. Let's cut to the hospital. Will wakes up in his bed with Joyce and Jonathan watching over their long-lost treasure, tears in their eyes. Soon after, Mike, Lucas, and Dustin come to visit. They excitedly tell him all the strange things that happened while he was gone. Nancy is happy for them, but grief washes over her when she thinks about her best friend who will never come back. A month later, it's Christmas, and Will is nearly fully recovered. The four boys reunite in Mike's basement to play Dungeons and Dragons. They win the game, but the knight is still heartbroken. His princess is gone. Nancy gives Jonathan a quick kiss on the cheek and hands him a gift. Jonathan secretly rejoices. Just when I thought they'd get together, Nancy heads back to the living room and curls up in Steve's arms. Turns out the gift is from Steve, an apology for Jonathan. Will helps his brother open the box. Inside is a brand new camera. Jonathan instantly realizes he'd gotten his hopes up for nothing. Since her younger son's return, Joyce has been in much better spirits. The three of them enjoy a joyful family meal at the table until Will's face turns pale. He rushes to the bathroom and spits out a slimy, disgusting thing. In a flash, his surroundings shift to the upside down, then snap back to normal just as quickly. Scared of worrying his family, Will pretends nothing happened and joins them back at the table. The boys come back from the dead, and the police department has cracked a major case. The cops are all celebrating happily, but the chief grabs some food and leaves. He drives to the woods, places the food in a box, smiles softly. All right, that's the end of Stranger Things Season 1.